welcome. Right now we have a CASA couple volunteer with us. We have the Rosenbaums with us. Welcome to our first CASA chat session. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. Thank you so much.
Go ahead and introduce yourselves and let us know which county your case is from.
Well, my name is Deidra, and this is Charles Rosenbaum, and we are a husband and wife that are serving in the Hayes County.
And are you from Hayes County, or is that the one that was first available for you?
We are in Hayes County. Okay. This is where we live. We live in Buda, Texas.
Okay, so just so everyone's aware, we cover Hayes, Caldwell, Guadalupe, and Comal. And so as a trained CASA volunteer with our program, you are eligible to take a case out of any of those 4 counties. So you just happen to be assigned one from Hayes County. So you are an interesting couple in that you are both kind of at the 1-year mark. Deidra a little over a year, Charles a little under. But what's so fascinating to me about that is that you went through different training cycles. Deidra, you went through right before the pandemic hit, and Charles went right after. So have you two discussed at all the kind of difference in the training models, what you liked about it, what was different? Just trying to give people an idea moving forward. We'll probably at some point start offering both options. So what was good, Deidra, about being there in person?
Well, in person, I got to actually meet the people in person. It provided an active just engagement, getting to see what the office looked like, getting to know who are our support staff and the people who work at CASA. We had the in-person speaking, speakers and the reading. It was where I did the evening classes. So I would drive from my place in Buda to New Bronzeville. So I did have to block off a time to drive. Also, what was interesting was doing the court observations. I was able to go in person and then see the behind the scene that maybe you don't get to see as much when you're in the Zoom process that I'm experiencing now as a CASA advocate.
Perfect. And Charles, you did the online, so you did not have to do the driving. We did it via Zoom, and I'm sure that was a challenge, but did you still feel pretty prepared when you were finished with that training?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thankfully for myself, we had just gone through quarantine at school where we had to teach through Zoom, and our students had to be engaged with it through Zoom. So I had some practice, but for a couple of the other people in my class with the CASA, it was a learning curve that they had to go through. But watching on the court on Zoom, it's a little bit different, and you've got to make sure you time it just right. You got to enter the Zoom and exit the Zoom, and so you do miss some of the dynamic of in person. But for a busy individual, it's a great way to get taught because you can do it at your time and you just set up your time, you get in your office. But for myself, I would have enjoyed also the in-person.
Great, okay.
But also I'm a full-time student that's online. So I am very comfortable with the online capabilities as well.
Perfect. And moving forward, y'all have had to do, even though you did the training in person, your case has pretty much been virtual since. Well, tell me a little bit about getting that case assignment. I always try and explain to people the relationship between the supervisor and the volunteer, that you're never just handed a case and said, here, go advocate. So tell me a little bit about what it's like when you're appointed to your first case. What does that even look like?
Well, I completed my training in February and I was assigned my first case in May. So originally what it was is that I got approached by the supervisor via email and to see if I would be interested in accepting the case, which I definitely was. And so that's where you then get to set up a call and you talk with your supervisor first about what's the next steps. They do walk you through, for example, reaching out to placement, to reaching out to the various parties to, how to go and review the case file. Again, it was more challenging this time because we were all restricted to the COVID protocols. So everything was handled via phone or Zoom. our safe exchanges when we had to do the safe exchange of the case file. But the supervisor has been fantastic. I mean, she's right there. She talks to us. We actually had a group meeting, a joint meeting with her to introduce ourselves, and they walk you through. And so that's essentially how it started for us.
So she kind of gave you the first steps of what to do to get started. I always tell people training is great, but when you're actually handed a case file, you're like, what do I do now? All of a sudden it's real. So what are some of the things, tell me a little bit about your case, maintaining confidentiality. We already know it's out of Hays County. So are they younger children, teenagers, more than one child? Just a little bit about who you're working with.
Our children are young, very young. In fact, when they were brought into CPS custody, the oldest was 2.5, and they are siblings that are 10 months apart. And it was brought to CPS. They entered into CPS's custody based off of illegal drugs for the parents, but also the children tested positive. And it all in the circumstances of how it came to the attention when one of the parents tried to drop off the children at their daycare. And so that also shows you that safety net. So per the daycare, that's how it became to the CPS attention. They are in relative placement. So they are with their grandparents and been working through and we are advocating for them and assisting, making sure that we're monitoring what is in their best interest, what's happening with their health needs, talking with the daycare. I have established a relationship with the daycare. They have gone to a new daycare due to the fact of proximity to the grandparents, and it's been and things like that, just to facilitate those different processes and monitoring, as well as the other outreaches that are required to make our recommendations.
So they're pretty young children. You're not necessarily needing to spend time and bond with them. It's more, in this case, you are talking amongst all of the adults and getting information from them. Is that correct? Because a lot of times we think of CASA as interacting with children, but there's so much more to being a CASA volunteer than just being there for the children.
So true. And then also, because this was COVID, we were also restricted to not having in-person visits. So being at that age, they're not interested in talking with you on Zoom. So I can observe them, but most of my conversation is with the grandparents while I'm observing the children, getting their, facilitating and helping them in this process, as well as via phone.
Okay. And then tell me about going to court. You talk to all of these people and then you get to your first court session. And what is that like? Did you feel like you were heard? Did you feel like the information that you gathered, you were able to present to the judge? How does that go being a CASA volunteer in the courtroom?
Well, the first experience is writing the court report. So, so we get that template. We work very carefully and closely with our supervisor to make sure that we have all our pieces together and all our information in our recommendation. So she was very hands-on in walking us through that process. So being in court, again, it was via Zoom. And so it's different. Definitely the judge listens to CASA. They definitely want to hear our input and our recommendations. Now for the first one, I was not comfortable with presenting. I wanted to observe it. And so my supervisor presented. But since then, for subsequent ones, after I observed it and seen how the process worked, I have been able to do the presentation.
And that's what I always tell people, that relationships with their supervisors evolve depending on the comfort level of the volunteer. So yes, if you're not comfortable presenting in court, our supervisors are there to make sure that your information gets presented. But of course, we would love to hear from the volunteer as soon as the comfort level's there. So yes, that's perfect. That's exactly how those case supervisors come into play.
And the judge is very, very receptive and and understands that you're a volunteer and wants to hear from you and knows that you're there as a volunteer and you are there for the best interest of the children.
So tell me about time, because you have these court hearings about once every 3 months, and then in between you're talking to those adults, you're keeping up with the children. About how much time do you think that y'all spend on your casework as a CASA volunteer?
I spend probably 10, 15 hours a month.
Okay.
Due to the fact that you will actually spend more time at the very beginning, due to the fact of you're establishing the relationships, you're having to do the file reviews. I've had some situations where there have been an emergency work being done. So, but also to write the reports, make sure I document and provide the information that can support CASA, as well as present. So
Okay.
the actual talking with individuals, because I talk to daycare, I talk to healthcare providers. It just depends. It's just in short spurts.
And a lot by email.
And a lot by email.
Email, phone calls, a lot of this, even pre-COVID. I mean, right now it's pretty much all done electronically, but even before COVID, a lot of your work as a CASA volunteer is just emailing those people and following up and making sure what the judge got court ordered is being put into place. So follow up is really big for a CASA volunteer.
Right.
Well, let's start back at the beginning. Now that we've kind of walked through a case, tell me why y'all even decided. You're just going through your day. Did you hear about CASA, or someone you knew was a CASA volunteer? How do you even get involved in this program?
Well, basically, I've known about CASA for a couple of decades, and I've always admired the work. But back in December 2019, I was in a transition in my work environment, and you had great commercials. You had great commercials that were motivations. And also we've had exposure to the foster care system just through our church, and to see how it impacts the children. So it was just one evening I decided, it just triggered. It was time. I wanted to do this. So the very next day, I found out what to do and how to do the application, all in December within the first week, and did the initial training and started the training in January. And then within 3 weeks, found out there was husband and wife team. So I actively recruited him. So,
volunteers are the best recruiters.
Yes. Yeah.
And so how does that work, Charles? She comes to you and you said, I've heard of CASA, or what was your motivation to joining in on this team? Because not every couple wants to do it together. You know, you hit that age in life where you start doing stuff together, or this is your time to go out and do things alone. So y'all chose this as one of your activities together.
And for me, it started about, like she said, about 3 years ago when we moved to the Austin area. The church is very active with a children's home here in Austin area, and just got to know the students, as you know, through church. And she brought it to me, and I had also seen the same TV commercials, and they always tugged at my heart. At the time, I was just going into COVID protocols at school, and I thought, well, why not? This might be a great move. So as soon as school was out, I got my students taken care of. I jumped in, went through, I think I was either the first or second class on Zoom. They did a great job. And then, yeah, you got the case after then she could finally start talking to me again. And, but one thing I want to say about her, she found out that one of the little girls at daycare loved one very special book. So she jumps on Amazon, gets it sent to her overnight so she could read it and talk to her via Zoom about this little book. And it meant so much to the little girl, but more to the grandparents, that, you know, she had taken the time to get this book, read it, and know it well enough to interact with the young lady. So.
And that's something that as a CASA volunteer, you think to do. You know, we have chosen these children as ones that we're going to advocate for. And you as a CASA volunteer take that responsibility very seriously. And I hope the community really appreciates that, because these are kids that are going to grow up to be our community members. And the fact that you took time just to read a book, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but as you mentioned, it went farther than just the child. So you've been at this for a year now. And again, we talk about the benefits of the children, but what have you two gotten out of it as being CASA volunteers? Why would you recommend to someone else that you're not just helping the children, but what is this volunteer opportunity allowed for you to do? And what have you seen in yourself from this year opportunity?
I'll go first.
Okay. All right. Good.
I used to see things in a very specific way, which the training was so good about showing me that I put on the wrong glasses at time. But I've watched one of the parents that's in the program really take responsibility for their life. And it has been amazing. It's been eye-opening. And it's changed the way I see things when it comes to families that are in trouble. So for me, it's been a blessing.
Perfect.
Yeah. And for me, it actually, not only that, but it provided me the means to see how else I can help the community. You know, you can donate money, but then I found out it actually is so fulfilling to donate your time and see, you know, how you can help. It feeds you, and especially for individuals that are going through employment transition. Yeah, it's so good to get out there and also to connect with the community, seeing how you're helping them. Also connect with my husband because it was challenging, though I had kept it all confidential. I really wanted to have that support to be able to talk with him, to put our heads together. How can we fix this? Also, from my professional experience, I was able to take my skills that I had as from my healthcare provider side, payer side, to be able to assist the grandparents with, for example, getting the services that were needed for them to succeed, the relatives, as well as talk directly with the providers. Because that's one good thing about being in Central Texas, is that we're appointed as guardian ad litems. And I'm able to take that court order and present it to the daycares, to the healthcare providers and different things, and be able to help with those auth processes, and also help assist with getting those interventions, those health interventions that we need, from simple as speech therapy to, you know, different being conducted at daycare versus, you know, so it could be in person, right, and things like that, to resolve that and work for those children.
And it's pretty empowering to know that you, an average community member, are allowed to do that for a child. I mean, and we'll just clear this up for anyone who's curious. Do either of you have any background in child protective services or attorneys or going to court, any of that?
I am an attorney. So I am unusual. So I also want to advocate for attorneys that you can do something different besides being an attorney. Okay. So I understand the processes, but I'm not practicing as an attorney. I am providing a community thing. I'm also, my background is in regulatory compliance for basically a healthcare, you know, payer organization. So I know how those processes work. You
have to be a CPS worker or a counselor or a retired teacher. You don't have to have worked with children at all. Retired teacher right there.
No, he's a teacher.
You never retire as a teacher.
My husband's a teacher. That's good to know ahead of time. Okay, well, Deidra, Charles, thank you so much for talking with me today. And if anyone is interested in becoming a CASA volunteer, here are some great examples of what it looks like. You can work as individuals, or as these two have shown, you can work as a team. But thank you so much for spending some time with me. Look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.